We begin in Baltimore, where crews are taking significant steps to try and reopen the port after last week's deadly bridge collapse. The U.S. Coast Guard has opened an alternate channel for boats involved in clearing the wreckage. Workers are also cutting what's left of the bridge into pieces and moving tons of debris.
Every time someone goes in the water, they are taking a risk. Every time we move a piece of the structure, the situation could become even more dangerous. We have to move fast, but we cannot be careless. I've been clear with this team that we have got to prioritize safety. And my directive is to complete this mission with no injuries and no casualties. We've already lost 6 Marylanders to this crisis. I refuse to lose any more.
Nicole Sganga has the latest from Baltimore.
Good evening, Nicole. Today, the Unified Command announcing that they will lift a 350-ton piece of debris, a mangle and twisted steel part of the bridge on the north end by the end of the day. All of this in an effort to clear that 700-foot wide expanse of channel. Now, today, also an announcement that there is a smaller channel on the northeast side of the waterway open to some traffic, including commercial barges and some vessels that will be integral to the salvage operations in the coming days. The U.S. Coast Guard says it's also working on opening up 2 more channels, one along the south side and a third channel that can accommodate larger ships once more debris surrounding the container ship Dolly is removed. All of this activity happening before President Biden comes to Baltimore on Friday, and the White House announcing today that the Small Business Administration has opened 2 business recovery centers in Baltimore for workers, small businesses who were directly impacted by the bridge collapse to visit and to apply for loans of up to $2 million. In the next few days, some concerns that the weather could slow down these salvage efforts. We're expecting a storm system to hit starting tomorrow. Right now, crews have anchored down the container ship Dolly, 4 anchors attached to the stern of the ship and a tug in anticipation of that weather to ensure that the container ship doesn't spin out and cause further damage. Nicole, I'll send it back to you.
Let's bring in senior advisor and assistant to President Biden, Tom Perez. He's also the director of the White House Office of Intergovernmental Affairs. Thanks so much for being with us. And first off, just tell us more about President Biden's visit to Baltimore. What can we expect this coming Friday?
Well, the president said immediately after this tragedy that we're going to move heaven and earth to help the victims, their families, the community, and the rebuild. And he's going to be there Friday to see for himself the progress that has been made. The Unified Command is truly unified. We have federal, state, and local partners working away. This is a really challenging undertaking. It's 110,000 tons when you add up the vessel and the bridge debris, 110,000 tons. So there's a lot of work to be done. We still need to recover 4 bodies, and that work will continue. That is something that Governor Moore correctly said. We will put safety first. We want to give closure to the families. In the meantime, as you correctly point out, the Small Business Administration has already acted. The Department of Labor at a federal level is working closely with the State Department of Labor to make sure we're moving forward to help displaced workers. There's a lot of work streams at once, and we are doing them all, and we're doing them all as effectively and safely as possible.
You talked about some of the families, and I know that you met with some of the victims' families last week. Will the president also meet with them Friday?
Yes, we're planning the day out right now. I have met with the families, and it was just profoundly sad. And as you know, the president himself is no stranger to tragedy in his own life, and that's why as soon as he heard about this, one of the first directives to me was make sure we are with the families, make sure we're supporting those families. I mean, these are, they do the work that all too many people won't do. In the middle of the night, you're out on a road making sure that the next day people can get to work safe and sound. The most important right a worker has is to come home safe and sound. and that didn't happen for these workers. So the president puts a very, very high value on making sure that we protect worker safety and that we take care of families, and that's going to be a big part of what we do in the days and weeks ahead.
And as you know, many of the victims were from Mexico and Central America. And in terms of some of the support that you're talking about, is the White House doing anything specifically to assist their relatives, particularly those who may live outside of the United States?
I've personally, within the last half an hour, participated in a telephone call exactly about that. There's a way to get loved ones into a country called humanitarian parole. When you lose a loved one like this and you have perhaps a brother or a mother or some other relative that lives in Mexico or Guatemala or Honduras or El Salvador, which are the 4 countries involved here, there is a process for allowing them in for a certain period of time so that they can mourn with their family members. And so we're working with the Department of Homeland Security to process those requests, and we're going to continue to sit down and listen and learn from the families. I can't overstate how tragic it was. These were the bread earners. Not only were they supporting their families here, but in most cases they were sending money back home to loved ones, and that's a big part of this tragedy.
The White House has already allocated about $60 million to help the state of Maryland in the wake of this bridge collapse. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg has called on Congress to provide more funding. Here's what he told Face the Nation.
The pitch is your district could be next. And also, this has historically been bipartisan. And I'm not just reaching back to bygone eras. Remember, the infrastructure package itself, President Biden's infrastructure plan, went through on a bipartisan basis.
As you may recall, back in 2007, Congress approved aid 2 days after a bridge collapse in Minnesota. Do you think you can get that same type of cooperation in this Congress?
I do, for a number of reasons. First of all, the Port of Baltimore is a resource not simply for the state of Maryland, but for the country. I mean, more cars get imported and exported from the Port of Baltimore than any other port in America. So this is a national resource that's a big part of our national supply chain for so many critical goods that come to the United States and leave from the United States. Secondly, that vote you mentioned in Minnesota that Secretary Buttigieg mentioned, the vote to help the people of Minnesota in the aftermath of that tragedy was 421 to 0. This is not about Republicans and Democrats. This is about maintaining a critical aspect of our economy and making sure that we can continue to be the strongest nation in the world in terms of our economy and moving forward, making sure that we can do that. I'm confident we can do this in a bipartisan fashion, and we will continue to work toward that end. The president has been very clear about making sure that the federal government plays a very important role in this issue, and we'll continue to work with our federal delegation, but frankly, with every member of the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate, because as the Secretary correctly pointed out, we don't know where this will happen next. We hope it will never happen anywhere else, but history teaches us that these sorts of incidents take place, and that's when we come together.
And this incident, as you referenced earlier, has put a spotlight on some of the dangers that many immigrant workers face. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Hispanic workers are more likely than any other racial and ethnic groups to die on the job. So as a former labor secretary, do you think reforms are needed to make some of these jobs safer?
Well, the National Transportation Safety Board is looking into this. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration is looking into this. You may be aware that roughly a year ago on one of the interstates in Maryland, there was another incident involving the tragic loss of lives. Immigrants make up about 25% of construction workers. These heroic people were doing work that, frankly, few other people are willing to do in the middle of the night. They're trying to build a bridge to opportunity for their own families, and in so doing, they made the ultimate sacrifice. We've got to make sure that what I said to you earlier on in this conversation, that the fundamental right that all workers have of coming home from work safe and sound is a right in fact and not simply empty promises. And I'm sure that everybody at Occupational Safety and Health, which I used to run the Maryland Labor Department as well as the U.S. Labor Department, and I know the professionalism there. And we're going to learn from these tragic incidents here and the one that occurred a year ago in Maryland, and make sure that we do our level best to prevent these from occurring ever again.
All right, Tom Perez, good to see you as always. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.